Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of FinServ Tech Oracles. I'm Johna Johnson. I'm here with my oracular colleague, Jerry Murphy, and we're about to share our thoughts on technology for financial services firms. And Jerry, for this episode, you wanted to talk about the latest NIST security framework, which has made some interesting and important additions. So let's back up for a second. What is the NIST framework and how has it changed financial services firms' approach to security?
Well, the NIST cybersecurity framework is really, NIST is National Institute for Standards and Technology, and their job is to come up with proposed, standards on various types of technology. A lot of it is computer technology, and the cybersecurity framework is specifically focused on how does one make organizations more secure. The fundamental concept in a nutshell is one of zero trust. That is, I'm going to not assume, we take the old classic trope of I've got a castle and I put a big moat around it with firewalls, right? So it's sort of the network is the thing I'm securing against unauthorized access. But what people realize over time is that I could get access via applications. And do I really entrust all those people inside the castle? It's like, not necessarily. So that was the first thing is focus that. But what happened is, I think with the initial framework is it kind of got sort of heavy and constipated and complicated, and people sort of like, oh my God, it was in an effort to be thorough. It was really thorough, but it also became almost hard for people to really grasp the extent of which they'd have to change things to put it in.
Yeah, and I remember working with NIST probably a dozen years ago, and my takeaway of the framework at the time was that it was simultaneously ridiculously over-obvious, like, yeah, no kidding, these are all the things you have to do, and out of touch with reality. In fact, our contribution as Nemertes was to essentially tie the NIST framework to the concept of business risk to help people prioritize actions they could take so that they could turn this hypothetical thing into something actually practical. But Jerry, when you and I were talking, this version of the framework has made great strides in that direction. So what has changed and how has it made things more practical and livable?
Well, I'd say there's two change. One of them feels onerous and the other's helpful. First is, if you look at the initial framework, it really had some, 5 key concepts, which were identify, assets. Then you want to protect those assets. You want to detect any potential intrusions. You want to respond to those intrusions, and then you want to recover, from anything that would happen. What they've really added to that is govern, right? Because the reality is, a lot of people want to have auditable infrastructure so that you can either prove they're safe or pinpoint, when something happened, get to the source of it. So they've added this concept of governance that's become a key element, which sounds onerous, but it certainly is necessary, right? But the other thing that they've done is they've really gone out of their way to add a bunch of resources to actually help people implement it. As you mentioned, Johna, implementing it has really become kind of daunting and confusing to a lot of people. So one of the things they've done, for example, is they've added a wealth of resources. One is to give you examples of how to do implementations. They give you quick start guides. They have a form of formal mappings to show how the NIST framework interrelates with other types of themes and elements in your infrastructure. And they recognize the fact that different types of industries are going to have different needs and may want to put some elements of the framework in before other ones. And so they've actually done a really good job of both providing you a roadmap as well as guides to help you get those implementations in place.
Which is really a big piece of what they were lacking before. So it sounds like they've done a nice job. So it sounds like, reading between the lines, what your recommendation is now, with this addition of governance and the addition of a lot more of the how to and what to do first, and here's an example, it's worth it if you'd been treating NIST as kind of a check the box, but it's not really super helpful. If you'd been treating it that way in the past, you might want to go back and revisit it, because now there's this stockpile of resources that are useful, as well as adding just the concept of governance, which, again, it's kind of motherhood and apple pie. I roll my eyes at these things because it's like, of course you have to have governance. No kidding, you think?
Yeah. And you'd be lying to say that what's there is easy, but I would certainly say it's kinder, gentler, and more helpful to help you actually achieve security, as opposed to you must comply or you're going to be
punished,
lagooned by the government. Here, let us show you how we can help you implement this for your own good. So it's good.
And that is better, and it's good to know it's constantly progressing. I think maybe we can hope that one day this century they will actually begin tying all of the above to business risk, so that you're prioritizing things based on business risk.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the last thing. And the reality is, business risk is kind of up to you and your company, right? Because even in the same industry, different companies have different levels of risk. So I think it would be, my opinion, would be a little bit too much to say they're going to help you assess your risk, but you should be doing it.
Well, a dozen years ago, we provided a fairly straightforward framework for figuring out what your own business risk. So we're not telling you what it is. We're telling you how to approach A, assessing it, and B, tying it specifically to cybersecurity, since business risk is much bigger than just cybersecurity.
That would be a nice addition. If it ever
and we did in fact add that, so hopefully they're going to come around to promoting that a bit more.
Yeah.
So so basically your takeaway, Jerry, is, hey, NIST has some additions. The NIST cybersecurity framework has some additions. Check them out. The additions fall into two categories. Number one, the recommendation for governance, and number two, a nice library of resources that are actually more helpful than otherwise, which is new-ish. And so your recommendation would be, if you haven't looked at it for a while, it might be a good idea to go back and look at it again. Did I capture all that?
Absolutely, yeah. It's time to seriously check it out again, and it will much more be aligned with helping you implement it now.
Okay, well, that's it for today. Tune in next week at 0900 for the next episode of FinServ Tech Oracles, which is right before the markets open on Tuesdays. Thank you, Jerry.
Sure thing.